He just pretty.
Yeah. Black and beautiful.
That's right.
Welcome back, my beautiful audience, to another episode of the Bamboo Season Podcast. I'm your host, sober wellness coach Dorian Warmsley. This is the podcast where you'll hear stories of transformation, growth, healing, resilience. A lot of greatness is on this show. This episode is sponsored by Optimal Human Superfood Green Juice, baby. I've been doing it for about a month now. Energy levels are up, focus is up. Use my link in the description to get your free shaker bottle in 5 packs, baby. The best thing about it is the taste. Doesn't even taste like you're drinking some greens. Check it out. Now, my guest today is somewhat of an all-star at this point. 3-time Bamboo Season Podcast host. No introduction necessary. I bring you the leader, the empowerment guru, Miss Lorraine Lindsay.
That might be the best introduction I've ever had by you, actually.
Yeah.
Considering this is the third time.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'll take it.
Well, thank you, Miss Lorraine, for stopping on by. It's been some time.
It has.
You're one of the first guests. You came on a few months ago. Also, it's your 3rd time.
Mm-hmm.
Always great to have. Great conversation.
Love
great
it.
insights. You always got gems for the audience.
You feel like that?
Yeah. I was just on Instagram yesterday, and somebody who I know, she is a holistic healer in Arizona. I've known her about a year now. She recently shared one of your things.
Oh, did she really?
Yeah.
Oh,
But it wasn't
wow.
like from your page. It was like, you know how they take your video and use it, whatever?
Mm-hmm.
I forgot what the video was. And I was like, oh shit, that's Lorraine.
It's crazy. That seems to be happening a lot more often. It's very, you'll see, because you're doing what I'm doing, and when that consistency kicks in, it's like all of a sudden it's like someone strikes a match on dry grass and it catches fire.
One of my guests I had, name is Greg. He's a fitness coach out here. He does a lot of like funny skit videos.
Mm-hmm.
He asked him about him when he went viral and this and that. And he was just like, man, sometimes just one day the algorithm chooses you.
Yeah.
And I had that moment maybe about in March. One of my videos went viral. It was 1.8 million views.
Yeah.
And my follower count went up by like 2,000. I'm like, of all videos, this is the one.
Oh, I think I saw that one. Yeah.
When I was sleeping in the parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
But so one of the reasons I wanted you on today was because you did watch the episode I had 2 weeks ago with my father on.
Mm-hmm.
And you being somebody who's known me on a personal level, knowing what I've been through, the struggles, you've coached me in the past, you kind of understood how important that conversation was. And I wanted to kind of go over it for myself, but then also being to talk to somebody about it who kind of knows, and they can ask the right questions.
Kind of walk through it a little bit.
Yeah, and see, obviously I want to hear your take. I've gotten some great response from people, but yeah, we can just go a little
I'm curious,
overview.
what kind of response have you gotten? Let's start with that.
The first one I got, so it dropped at midnight, Wednesday. That morning, my friend called me, my friend Max, and probably shouldn't have said his, no, I don't matter if I said his name. He, I've known him for 7-8 years. He's been on my show.
Okay.
He's a father of 3. To my knowledge, I think he's, into his faith and stuff. He called me on 100. He called me, I didn't answer, then he texted me, bro, call me back. I'm like, all right, let me call. Cause I always like just catching up with him. I call and as soon as I answer, he's going off, like upset. Not at me, but like the way that I guess my father handled it. And he was just like, I think part of it is because he is a father to himself of 3 and he's a good friend of mine. So he was just saying like, man, this dude, is dodging stuff. And, the Bible says all these things and, you die for our sins. You didn't fight for your son and just all going in.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, put me in a room with him. I'll let him know how it is. And I'm like, damn. So crazy on the phone to where he's driving, and I guess somebody next to him driving thought he was like talking to them, and I could hear them him on the phone like
he's like, I ain't talking to you.
Yeah, and I'm like, bro, relax, it's okay.
Yeah.
Him and then another friend of mine, high school friend, he called me. I sent it to him. He called me and he was talking about how he's kind of going through something similar.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and just asking like how to make the decision to want to have the conversation. And I was like, damn. And then somebody else, Sean Torrey, he came on my show, and I remember asking him about him and his dad because he had some situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked him, like, what did you do to kind of have that breakthrough or amend that? He gave me a little advice. He watched it, and he was just like commending me for having that conversation.
Yeah,
that's the main response I've gotten from people, is just like some that are in that situation also, but a lot of them commending the strength or bravery,
courage, yeah,
to have it on there. And I've had some people be like, why would you do that?
Right. I mean, you're always going to get everybody every which way because it's a very triggering conversation. and there's a lot of different people from different sides of it that will see it differently. But most importantly, what was it for you? I mean, number one, having that conversation, choosing the platform in which you chose to have the conversation. And then third, how do you respond to the way people are perceiving the conversation? I know it was a 3-part question.
Yeah, dude, one at a time, please. Start with the
Okay,
first
well,
one.
let's start with the first one. So the first question was, well, how was it for you? Just right out the gate, like what's the first thing that comes to your mind as far as what that experience was like for you after so long?
I would say closure.
Do you feel like you got closure?
Yeah.
Okay.
And part of it was kind of like, it was, I don't want to say useless or pointless, but
Okay. I'm
do your thing.
coachy over here, so I'm writing some stuff down.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because it's deep.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's important for you to say what you're saying, but for people who are out there that are contemplating or would wish they could have this opportunity, maybe this will be a conversation that can be healing with them without that conversation. And so this is why I got to take some notes. So as you're sharing, I want to make sure I don't forget certain things. So that's okay. All right.
But yeah, that's what it was. And I think on all honesty, if I didn't have that conversation, I think I would have been good. Yeah.
Okay, why? Is that after the fact that you say, I would have been good regardless?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I honestly think there are things in the past that have him not being around kind of came up. But I think over the past literally 3 years since the last time I saw him in person, when I worked with you, I have another coach I've worked with, and just navigating, understanding the feelings and kind of what it was. I've worked towards, I guess, the healing side of things and accepting that he wasn't around. Now, does knowing why, I don't know if that necessarily would have helped me or anything, so I don't know if there was a specific answer I was looking for.
Right.
And then when he was speaking and talking, it kind of just seemed like fluff. It didn't really...
Elaborate on that.
He just kept saying the same thing of, I was focusing on what was in front of me.
Right.
I was only doing what I knew. I get that.
Right.
20 years, it took that... I'm not saying you... It sounds judgy, but it's like it took 20 years for you to... Even now, if I never reached out, we never would have the conversation.
Right. Because it's not right in front of him.
And that sounds so stupid to me.
Okay.
I'm not a kid. I'm not a parent. But it's like if you only focus on what was in front of you, I don't know. It's like, especially when you have 12, he has 15 kids total.
Yeah. I mean, from a practical stance, it almost makes sense.
To only focus
what's in front of you when he's created such a life that is so full of so many different human beings and spirits that might need him, that he created an environment where that can always be his excuse. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he could opt out with that because he literally has an existence that says, right now, I can only focus what's in front of me. When you say fluff, what do you mean by that?
Like I just said, like his reasoning behind it seemed as just... Like, I don't know. I'm not saying I don't believe it, but it just seemed like almost a cop-out.
Right.
You know? Like I said, only what's in front of me. I only did what I knew. And I understand that. We can only do what we know, but it's like, damn, at what point, especially when you continue to have more kids. And I honestly feel, after hearing it and then just thinking it through after the conversation, everything, like me leaving and all that was like his escape to not have responsibility anymore.
And you know what I got? Because I watched the interview a few times because I knew I was going to have this conversation with you. First of all, I watched it just because I wanted to watch it because of conversations we've had privately. And I thought it was very brave of you to do it, especially so publicly. But there was a few things in that conversation where he was repetitive in some of his answers. I understood it from like... psychoanalyzing the little boy inside of him and why that's his way, and one of the things he kind of nonchalantly brought up was, his mother and the absence of his mother and whatever that meant for him as far as worthiness for his life, which doesn't matter to him. He doesn't even seem to connect the dots to that at all. That might be too painful of a conversation for him to unpack for it in his own life. But more importantly, does it really matter to you and what you needed from him? No. I mean, the answer is no. So when you say the closure, I want to kind of circle back to that a little bit because you said, I think I would have had closure either way. Because here's what I found watching that interview or that conversation was, it was the first time that I ever saw you allow some surface of emotion to come through. I literally saw you pause. I saw your eyes water. I saw that the times it's hard for you to finish what you were going to say. And I was like, okay, that's it. This is a big, huge root for him in his life that has him kind of emotionally blank at times because it was all coming up. The little boy definitely was coming up there. But then quickly becoming that protector, even for your father, I thought that was interesting for me to observe about you because you would get there and then he wasn't a safety net for you to let that emotion all the way go through. He wasn't safe for you to do that emotionally. And so I saw you then pull back and then almost protect him a little bit. Did you find that you were doing that? Did you kind of process that?
I don't know. I know when the emotions came up, I told myself beforehand to not try to hold back anything, just to let everything come out and whatever it came, respectfully. Like, I didn't want to come out and go, you this and this and like go off.
Yeah.
But I wanted to make sure I was using my voice and making sure what was on my mind was said.
Right.
And for whatever reasons, even before it, knowing what was coming, like the days before, I would get emotional and kind of like tears would come up a little bit.
Why?
I don't know. When I was thinking about it,
What
I was going to say.
Yeah, what were you thinking?
Kind of the idea of missing having a father. Because up until we did move to Vegas, when I was like 12, all the way until 12, 13 years old, he was in my life. You know, I did spend time with him in the summers. I would go see him. We would do things together, which I remember. So then that part, the 20 years of missing that, having that. But for, I wouldn't say high school and my early 20s, I told myself the story of it, just what it is. Like, I don't have a dad in my life. Fuck him. It is what it is.
Right.
So it's 20 years of building up that armor of that story. And then now over the past 3 years, slowly breaking that down and not having that, because I don't feel anger or hatred towards him.
What do you feel?
Nothing.
That's not true.
It is. I don't have no emotion towards it.
I saw the emotion.
Probably then in that point, but like I said, that was closure for me in the sense of he is who he is. I don't think it mattered to him. And this is my perspective. If he watches it, he probably could say different. But in my head, if I didn't reach out to have the conversation, I never would hear from him again.
And how does that make you feel? Knowing that?
I don't know. I have to think about it.
Because it's interesting, observationally, right? Like, this kind of shutdown of emotion is that's something you've inherited from him. Because you're even doing it with yourself right now, how he was doing it with you on that podcast. Do you know what I mean? He is so emotionally disassociating with his emotion that he can only tell you what you call fluff. He can't go a level deeper with you because emotionally he cannot. And not because the emotion isn't there or that he doesn't care. It's just that he has learned to suppress it so deep because that shame is rooted. This is why when his outlet to that is his religion, to say, you know, God is going to forgive me. That's his scapegoat, so to speak. And I mean that respectfully to him and his way, because of course, when I was doing the math, I'm like, well, he was 20 years old when he had you, right? And so here's this man, he's certainly not the same person he was at 20 years old in some capacity, but there's also parts of us that emotionally do not grow up, that we're still the same 10-year-old, 15-year-old, 20-year-old. And so we've gotten older on the surface and life has lent us certain things where we either become very much victimized to it or we suppress ourselves even more or we absolutely grow from it. Like you're in a phase opposite in this regard of where you actually have said, okay, my life experiences got to a point where it was consuming me. And then at some point I was like, enough for whatever that catalyst that got you there. And then you're like, but now I need to grow from this experience. He never got there. He didn't have those epiphanies or that guidance. And I say that respectfully because I don't know the man, right? But the way I'm asking you questions and I'm being intentional is to see that this is definitely where you're picking up where he left off, but you're doing it to yourself. What you didn't do is like, I'm not going to go have 15 kids and do this to children. Yeah. And so in a way, it's like you're doing that to the children that are inside of you. Because you do have feelings about all of it. You know, it was very powerful what you did. And I saw the emotion when the perpetrator of the emotions was right in front of you, of you wanting to just say, especially when you talked about love and how you are with women and how you there's this part of you that doesn't entirely allow yourself to be loved. You know, so for you to sit here and say nothing, it's not true.
I just can't name the emotion, I guess.
Yeah. And that's okay.
Because, yeah, it's just crazy when I really think about it. I was just thinking about during this conversation, I'm like, yeah, if I never reached out to him, this conversation never would have happened.
Mm-hmm.
Probably never would have heard from him again. And what was funny, though, and I forgot to bring it up, so hopefully he watches this one because he'll now see, is that all this time he didn't care to reach out, have a relationship, right? Because it wasn't like he reached out and I was like mad and angry. No, I don't want to talk to you, like on some angry kid shit.
Right.
There was never no reach out. The last time we talked was in 2007, 2008 on MySpace. And it was like an argument via messages. And I called him out then about how you being the pastor, but you don't talk to your son. Same shit I said back then.
Yeah.
He was going off on me in a sense. And I'm like, what the fuck? I'm your son. I didn't talk to him again. That was a closed door for me right there. Fast forward till 3 years ago when I reached out to my cousin, like, hey, let's see my dad. We had like a small surface level conversation. But even so, still never, how's it going? How's nothing, right?
Yeah.
But then a year ago, decides to reach out to my mom.
Yeah, I remember this.
For her to take him off child support.
Yeah, I thought you were going to bring that up, actually.
I forgot.
Yeah.
For him to take him off child support so he can get a passport and go travel. I don't want you to fucking travel.
Yeah. Now, that was the only other time that I've ever heard you, when you called me when that was going on.
Yeah.
That was the only other time that I ever heard you break down. And you weren't breaking down like a sobbing baby. It sounded like anger, but it was just hurt and pain. And there was so much depth to that. And I remember like kind of talking you off that proverbial ledge because you were so angry with your mother and your father. And I want to ask you this, and not to overly create new narratives, right? Because here's the thing. And I've gone through this with my own biological father and asking those same questions of like, when my stepdad died and took his life, and that was the guy that you left me to at 6 months old, and you wrote me letters when he was gone, why didn't you come back? Everyone said you were this nice guy. Well, where were you to pick up the pieces, right? And so we create, when we don't have the answers, narratives as to what if, maybe this, maybe that, or sometimes we just say fucking, we just try to push it out of our brain. But then when you actually get some type of what we think is going to be closure, it's never the answers we want to hear, because it's almost like we want the answers to be so magical that it all makes sense, right? And quite often it just doesn't. You're looking at them like that's the answer, right? And so what I've learned is that, number one, it's almost more about just getting it off your chest to say it than it is about their reasons why. And so I'm being long-winded, you know how I do. But circling back, one of the observations, and so what I mean by when I say I don't want to create new narratives, is I don't want to cause you to start going down another rabbit hole. What if? But what struck me as interesting, especially when we were talking about two people who were young, they're probably each other's first love. You were the firstborn of all his children that he has, including your mom, right? So you're the first of whatever magic they had at one point in their lives. And then it seemed like they were both incredibly dysfunctional. They probably had a trauma bond together, on and on and on and on. But it seemed like in the conversation that your dad was having when I was watching was a lot about your mother. And it seemed almost as though he's trying to be respectful of your mother, doesn't want to say the wrong things, even didn't want to be disrespectful of Lorenzo, that kind of thing. But it seemed like, did he disappear really not because it was about his son, but because it was about his relationship with your mom? Because it seems also that when he does go back and reach out, not to his son, but it's always to the mother. Even when you had your horrific accident and you were asking him some tough questions that he couldn't answer. And I really applaud you for that, because sometimes we want to skate around because we're worried about hurting their feelings. But why shelf what you experienced and all the emotions you went through for someone who's in a hot seat right now for 30 some years of your life that it's affected ultimately? But it was interesting even then to me that there was this tethering between him and your mother still. And so for me, it was like, okay, his distance had everything to do with her and nothing to do with his son. And I would have been, and of course I don't know him, so I'm concluding that in my own mind. But it seemed like that is the kind of the undertone to why your dad wasn't around. And have they, as your mother or your father, ever talked about their dynamic and what that meant as to why your mother just up and left and went to Las Vegas?
Nah, I don't think that's the right.
And I don't know if it even matters.
No, I don't think that's what it was. I think it was just him, to be honest. Because he had been moved on. He has his own wife. She had been moved on with my stepdad, and we moved here because he had lived here previously.
Okay.
So he was like, stepdad was like, hey, let's move. It's a better life here. So we moved. And according to him, I haven't asked my mom, but what he said in the episode was, he hadn't talked to her since X amount of years.
Okay.
Back to the accident, that was shocking to me too, because he had no answer. And it was just, like I said, I'm not a parent, so it's hard for me to speak from that perspective. But as a human in person, somebody close to me was in that spot.
Yeah.
I'm doing everything I can to get out there or to get answers to what can I do. And it's just so wild to me that, like I said, your first kid with same name and everything. And your answer is, well, time went on and, you got better. And I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah. But
That's so crazy.
Nurturing comes from, and I'm not saying that a father can't be a nurturer, but your nurturing and your empathy traditionally comes from the way your mother cared for you, right? And he didn't have that.
I will say this, that conversation left me with much more. I've always had it, but way much more appreciation for my mom.
Okay.
And love.
That's good.
Like, it really made me feel like, okay. Because I hearing his answer when I was in hospital, compared to watching what she did,
right?
She basically almost lost her job because she had to be there.
Yeah.
And you only get so much, time off. And I just remember all those nights of her staying the night with me. And then even when I got to the hospital, her waking up at 1 a.m. just to walk me to the bathroom because I couldn't go by myself. Like, all those things. And even to this day, if I ever need anything, she'll do anything she can to make sure I have it. I remember when I was right before my accident, like a few months before my accident, maybe 6 months. It was 2014. I was living with, I was dating this girl and I was trying to get out of the situation. So I was staying with friends and I had no money. And she would literally drive across town and give me like her last 20 to go get food for the day or the next day. Little shit like that I remember. But back to the conversation after it. And I just compare and I'm just like, yeah, bro.
You know what's interesting is coming to my mind when you said that about your mom is that when we're looking for closure in our lives and we think the closure comes from the elephant in the room, which in this case was your absentee father, the real beautiful kind of almost miracle in all of that was that the closure actually needed was with your mom. And by having that conversation with him made you recognize your mother. And so it's interesting because sometimes what we think we want and need, we're given what we actually want and need. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And maybe that was the whole point of this all along.
Yeah, and kind of what you said earlier, it was more so about even not getting the answer or a magical answer, which I don't even know what answer would have been, make me feel.
Yeah, what could he have, let's go there.
I don't even know.
Let's play this out. What could your dad had said to you that would have been.
Made sense?
That would have made sense to you that, okay, that makes sense. Other than, I was in a coma the entire time.
What?
I mean, because other than that,
well, I
like,
really don't know because there's really no
excuse?
answer. I mean, honestly, if it was more honesty and accountability.
Well, why wasn't that honest for you? It was his truth, right?
His truth, possibly, but I think it's deeper than that. The way you get deeper with me, I was not a priority.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to.
Yes.
Because he also said, it's so crazy because he said.
But that, when you say that, okay, this is why I paused. That is that self-deprecating, that little boy that has made that mantra his thing. I wasn't a priority. That might not be what he was thinking, though. That might have been the intention of what he was doing had an impact on you that said, I was not a priority. That doesn't mean that that's what he thought. So you have to be very careful when you use that, because that's what your pain is feeling. That is what the impact was of whatever he did. But when he said, I dealt with what was right in front of me, that might have been the truth for him. Because does it make it right or wrong? No. Does it excuse it? Absolutely not. Because at the end of the day, you had a son that you neglected. Okay, let's not sugarcoat that. But I want you, for yourself, for your own healing, to be careful on how you then make it a truth that is self-deprecating to you. Because I don't think he thought that you were not a priority.
I don't think so either. I don't think he consciously said like, oh yeah, I'm not going to.
Or I'm not going to call him because he's just not a priority.
Yeah.
I don't think he knew how to prioritize anything in his life. Respectfully, I don't know the man, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I don't know me, the Lorraine.
Shit. I've seen you more times than I've seen him in the past 20 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, hey, we have our stories. I got the answers. I asked the questions.
Yeah.
Besides the child support one, which to me was so fucking weird. And honestly, I don't know. He doesn't know me well enough. You kind of do more now, but some people who don't, I'm fucking a genius. I'm very smart when it comes to seeing people and reading them and feeling them out and whatever. Yeah. And to me, what it sounded like overall is just a good talker. And I think he believes his religion and him being in his faith is going to save him. And it's not. Because
but now what you're doing is you're coming from a pain point.
No, I'm not. Call it pain. I'm still going to say it. Because when I hear him talking and say these things, I repented, the God's going to forgive me, and he's really into it. It's not going to save you, bro. It's not. Because the universe...
When you say it's not going to save him, what does he need saving from?
Himself.
In what way?
He needs to become aware, I believe, and take control of his life.
Okay.
And that sounds bad, comes so judgy, but I just feel he's hearing him in his life. It made me start to feel bad for him. Because here he is working as he does, as what he was saying, at 54 years old with 12 kids to care about on child support. Life's not going how he wants.
Right.
Because and I think because the lack of accountability and awareness, the universe gives you what you deserve, not what you want.
Okay. Or God.
I'm going to say universe. And
for him, it's God.
He thinks that's going to help him in his Bible, his religion. Nah, bro. You can repent. You can read all you want of the scriptures.
But how do you know that's not going to help him?
It hasn't in 20 plus years.
So you don't think that... I agree with you, okay? And and the reason why I'm doing this is because you say you don't feel anything. And when I push you just a little bit, you get defensive, right? And I don't mean it like that, but because you're still angry, you're still hurt. And so you're using the things that he is using as his tools to try to, in his mind, to make him better. In his mind.
Yeah.
Okay? I don't know him from 20 years old when he had you to now, and if there has been growth. It seems like he's had some growth in his life. It may not be what you consider growth, but it seems like he's had some growth. You know what I mean? Or he wouldn't be here. He'd be in very different situations. He mentioned his troubles with the law and his drug abuse at different times in his life. So he's made some progress in his life. Maybe not what you would have liked for you. No, and that's fair.
I agree.
But when you're so adamant that all these things are going to, it's almost like because you don't want that for him.
No, I do. But it's just funny that that's his
pathway?
No, not that it's his pathway, because I don't want to knock nobody for doing what works for them, whether it's religion, whether it's therapy, whatever.
But you are knocking him a little bit.
But he is using it as his, it's not even a tool, bro, because he's not using it. Like I said.
But when you say,
it's a facade to me. It's like a, well, I'm going to repent. I'm going to read my Bible. He's got me. No, bro, nobody's got you. You got to get yourself. Period.
Okay. For someone who believes in God and has faith, they would disagree with you. Okay?
That's fine. They can.
But what I'm saying to you is what you're saying is rooted in your pain.
That's fine.
Because let me ask you this.
That's how I've always felt.
Okay, but let me ask you this. I'm gonna challenge you a little bit because we don't want to make this about him and his pathway. But let me challenge you a little bit. Let's say the conversation was different. Let's just say your dad said, let's say years ago he found God, okay? And he started going to church and he started praying and he knew that repentance was important. And part of that repentance was to go to the people who he wronged, and try to make amends. And let's say he called you up, his son, and you were 12 or 15 when this happened. And he said, I found God, your dad's been going to church, and I have wronged you. And I feel like my faith in God has told me to repent, and I'm coming to you to say, will you forgive me? And what can I do now to be better in your life? Would you then still have the same conviction about his pathway for his healing?
Lorraine, that's a hard ass question to
It's
ask.
not.
You're telling me to put me back at 15 years old. I don't even know.
What I'm saying is, it's not really about his pathway, whether you want to call it God or universe or whatever you want to call it. If he's saying I went to church or whatever, you're making it so much about that, but that's not really the issue. And that isn't going to heal you. It's just going to make you angry at God. Because that's what's happened.
Call it what you want, but
when we talk about closure and healing sides of things, as I'm writing this stuff down, that doesn't do it for you, is what I'm saying.
I get that, but at the same time, no point did God tell you to go take care of your son?
He might have.
You know what I mean? But he told you to go preach. So that's why things don't make sense to me. I get it. People have religions, they have their beliefs.
But that has nothing to do with God. It has everything to do with your dad, is what I'm saying. Right?
Yes, yes.
Like
so
your dad,
confused. What?
But
make it make sense.
But it has to make sense to you how. And this is
Does that make sense to you?
What I'm saying is this.
Like what?
We can't get healing, true healing, when we need what a person is choosing to do make sense. Because it may not ever make sense.
True.
Do you know what I mean? He was a man that was raised without his mother. And I don't know all the ins and outs of his dynamic, but his dynamic made him a man who was irresponsible with having a lot of children he couldn't care for properly, made him an absentee father, made him a troublemaker in school, as he shared, made him a person who had issues with law and drug abuse. Okay? So this is not a whole man. Whatever pathway he's choosing for his healing, it may not make sense to you because you haven't walked in his footsteps. But that is not really the point here, is it? That's just his journey. You have your own. And I think that when we think about what makes sense and what not, and we're so external about it, it delays and stunts our own growth. And so I'm only challenging this way because it shows me that you don't have all the way closure because it doesn't make sense to you. And that's okay.
But you saying that makes sense for it to make sense to me.
Okay.
That doesn't have to make sense.
It doesn't.
That's it.
And when you surrender to that, it's just like,
it just feels good to get it off.
Yeah.
So what's crazy? What's crazy is during the conversation. There was like a moment. It was like something in my head popped in. It was like, this is going too smooth. You need to turn this shit up. It's crazy because I was sitting there thinking, it was like halfway through, and I'm like, and just something in my head
but
was
why
like,
did you need to turn it up? For television?
No,
okay.
Just because to me, I wasn't really. I guess the answers weren't kind of like you said, weren't the magical ones I needed or anything.
Yeah.
And I just felt bullshit. And a lot of his rebuttals back to me with stuff. And I'm like, I'm chill. Like I was chill composed, and all of a sudden something in my head about halfway through was like, nah.
You're too easy on him?
Yeah, it's going too good. But I had to talk to myself, and I was like, okay, if I go there, that's just going to be me speaking and going off out of anger.
But maybe that's what you needed to do.
I still said what I needed to say. I don't want to make it seem like I held back.
Yeah.
But self-talking to myself made me made sure that I delivered it. I guess the word to say productive way, without me just trying to you.
Yeah. But why do you feel like you couldn't do that in that moment?
I could have.
But why?
I talked myself out of it.
Yeah, but why?
That wouldn't have been productive. I don't think.
Yeah.
Because if you're talking to somebody about some.
But yet you're saying, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but what you're also saying to me is the approach you did was not productive.
Huh? No, yes.
Well, you're like, it was going too smooth. I felt like whatever. I felt like I need to get this off.
I think something in my head wanted the chaos, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Was
it the chaos or the release of everything you've been feeling?
I don't know.
Do you know what I mean? Like, you want to sit here and you made sure to put the disclaimer out there in the very beginning of this is not to bash and this and that. Well, maybe you needed to. Maybe you need to say, look.
See, I didn't want to because that's just, I guess, mean. You know what I mean? My goal really wasn't to try to shame and demean. I really didn't want to. I don't want to be a mean person.
Okay, but that's.
But then you got to make sure, not worry about their feelings for your pain.
Because you've been doing that your whole life. Okay, so there you go.
There we go.
The light bulb just went off. Your intention was never ever to shame a person because that's not who you are. So you were never going to do that anyway. But for you to say, God damn it, Dad, you fucking hurt me. I missed you. I am broken. I struggle in personal relationships. And I want answers. And I want to know why. And maybe you don't have the answer, but I got to say this to you because I'm hurt. I am hurt. And if you are feeling ashamed of what I'm saying, then it's on you. That is the shame that you're carrying, that you're pretending is not there. And I can't tell you what to do with your shame. But I carry shame too because I had to walk around with no daddy. Okay? And so I think that feeling inside of you, because you are thinking about the other person still, and I applaud you for it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But sometimes you got to let your heart break.
Turn up.
You got to let your heart break. It didn't mean you got to come across the table and beat his ass. But it's just like, you don't get to sit here and be calm with me. I don't hold space with you like that. Not right now. In this moment, you gave me, for the first time in my life, space for me to say how I feel. And that's going to show up in different ways because I felt different things over these last 30-some years of my life. And so I understand why you didn't. Again, because that's the character and the person that you are. But don't think that it would have been bad if you did.
No, I regret it. But seeing it now full circle, yeah, it definitely should have just let it go off how I
and you can
felt.
still. The conversation doesn't have to be over. It doesn't end with a podcast conversation. You can say, Dad, I watched back the show and now we have this footage and I'd like to sit with you and watch it. And there's some things I need to say. There's still things, and it's going to take time. And you say to him, if we're going to do this, you can never be you're always going to be my father, but you're never going to be my dad. That time is come and gone. But in order for us to have a relationship that I'm not chasing after, there will come times when things will come up that I want to say still. You don't get the privilege of an hour when it was 30-some years of my life. And if you're okay with me sometimes bringing up stuff that hurts, then we can try to mend this relationship and moving forward.
Yeah, that's something I got to think about because at this point, I don't know if I want to or not.
Yeah.
So we'll see as time goes on and progresses through life and whatever. But like I said, I'm glad it happened.
And I'm proud of you, by the way.
Thank you.
I really am, because you and I have had a lot of conversations, worked through a lot of different things, and you've been incredibly proactive in your life. And to be brave and not avoid that conversation.
And, the people for the people who ask me why on the podcast, why it's so public.
Yeah.
Because I just feel the vulnerability and openness of myself is going to help somebody else.
Yeah.
Because especially from the response I got, I know people personally who are in the same situation, and people who I don't know are going to see it and they want to have that conversation. I don't mind being the guinea pig and the one open.
Yeah.
And there's two people, maybe three now, but there's two for sure that kind of inspired me and helped me keep going in life, which is Eric Thomas and David Goggins.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the first things Eric Thomas, not one of the first things, but something big he did was share his life and share his struggles. And the main thing one thing he said was when he became successful in all these things, his relationship with his dad, not being around, was holding him back from that next level.
Of course, absolutely.
So he said he drove, I think from Detroit to Chicago or vice versa, X amount out by himself, had the conversation, let it out, and then in return it kind of helped him elevate. And when he said that, I was like, okay, one day I'm going to do that. And this is years ago.
Yeah.
Years ago. It's so crazy. Years ago I heard them say this. And I was okay. And then reading David Goggins' book, both his books are amazing. And even on the podcast, he's just sharing the rawness and the pain. And for me, when I do share these moments and these things, it feels healing. And it's almost feeling like I got nothing to hide. I feel like not everybody, there's people out there who are in my shoes. Probably not exactly, but there's something.
The narratives don't have to be the same, but we all experience the emotional things the same, I think. I think that's where we're all so connected, is that pain is pain, suffering is suffering. It feels viscerally the same in our bodies, and it affects our minds the same, regardless of whether or not the stories are the same, right? Because no two person will ever have the same story.
You know who else was who pushed me to not want to do it, but kind of was the other third person, was comedian Theo Von.
Okay.
He has a podcast.
Uh-huh.
And to me, he's hilarious. Some people don't like him, but I think he's hilarious. But he's so funny, and his jokes are they're like cancel culture jokes. You know what I mean? But he don't care. But on his podcast, there's times where he's been starts crying and talks about his mom's situation, his dad's situation. His dad was like 70 when he had him, so he didn't have a relationship with him before he died. And as funny as his podcast is and it's jokey, but he'll have those moments where I'm like, damn, bro. He had Tony Robbins on his podcast once.
Let me ask you a question before you go down this rabbit hole. This guy, was it just safer?
Safer? Huh, good question.
Being on a platform an hour, people were going to be watching. Was there somewhere in your mind that this is safer for your vulnerability?
Maybe.
Yeah.
That's a good question. Maybe.
Because you've got people here, you got lights, cameras, action. I think it seemed like his wife was in studio. Towards the end, I think he was talking to who.
Yeah, she came in.
Yeah. So you didn't have to really show you how vulnerable you were, and neither did he. Because he knows he's being watched on camera. So the answers were safe. You know you're being watched on camera. So the questions were safe.
No. I ain't going there. I don't care about the cameras. I'll ask what I need.
I know, but
some things I forgot just because it was so much, and I should have wrote notes.
But
I don't give a damn.
I think both of you played it safe, and that's okay.
That's okay. You're entitled to your opinion. I'll let you have your opinion. We all have opinions.
But at least it does help other people, and it is maybe a slight open door if you're ever open to it, to really have a private one-on-one conversation with him.
Yeah, I don't know. I would have to see a therapist first. I want to see a therapist first and see where that goes, because I just don't.
But you maybe not. Maybe you got what you needed out of
moment in time.
Dorian.
I don't see why.
Yeah.
If I had a good, compelling why, then maybe. But I don't.
Yeah, that's okay.
It's just too long without. Maybe it'll take time. You never know what changes in a year, 2 years.
That's fair.
But yes, one of the main reasons I did it was for the people.
Yeah, but you should have did it for yourself first.
Yeah, that too. You're right. I care about others more than myself sometimes. All the time. Most of the time. Well, I appreciate you watching it.
Of course.
I appreciate everybody out there who watched it, because there's people who there's people I didn't expect to have watched it and who reached out. I'm like, whoa. And
that's the whole point. Like, even for me doing what my part, and I'm pretty much an open book as well, you know. And there are people, I get all kinds of people question, good, bad, indifferent. Some people, there she goes again, whatever. I don't care. I don't care. Honestly, I don't care. Because if it's just one person, I don't need followers and likes and things like that. That's not the goal. It's happening organically, but it's not the goal. And truly, it's like, I know what it means to, like you were talking about E.T. and, you know, David Goggins. I know what it's like sometimes when you're so lost and you're circling the people around you, and it's not their fault. You're lost, and you just pick up a phone and you hear a message, and you could be the only one listening to it, but it's finally that little click that you need that just gets you out of it, you know? And so I think it's important, this kind of work.
You know, have you seen 8 Mile?
Yes, a long time ago.
Okay, well.
Okay, I'm curious to where this reference is going to be. Are you going to start breaking out on hip hop?
No, it's just,
lose yourself.
I've heard somebody else refer to it too. I think it was David Goggins, how when he shares his story and the shame and all that, it's like there's that scene in 8 Mile when he's rapping against the guy, and his friend's like, what are you going to say? You know, he had sex with your girl, you live in a trailer. And then Eminem in return used that in his advantage. Like, you fucked my girl, I live with my mom, I am white trailer park. You know,
he said all the things a guy could possibly say. He navigated objections, and it almost, what we call business.
Gave him his power in the sense of, all right, now
like,
what else
what can you say? Yeah.
And that's how I feel sometimes when I share the things I do. I think about that scene, like, it's like almost empowering sometimes. But I just want people not to feel alone mostly. Yeah. Because there's times where I thought I was the only one, and then I hear E.T. in his story, and I was like, oh, shit. Okay.
Did you see that thing I sent you on Instagram with that the other guy? He's on a podcast. And he was breaking down with his dad there, you know? But he did the same thing. He's like talking to his father. His dad doesn't know what to say. Yeah. I'm a mom, okay? And the worst thing that I can ever imagine is hurting my son emotionally. But I've hurt my son emotionally because that's just what happens in life. Not that I meant to, but when it gets confronted, it takes everything as a parent to not want to defend themselves and having to really take a seat back and saying, this is not your time to defend what you did. And that goes for relationships too. When you really love somebody and that person's saying, you hurt me. I am broken because of what you did. The first response you want to do is say, well, it's because of this or because of that. You didn't understand. I was going through the, and you want to throw the excuses because you number one, you don't want to deal with the fact that you hurt somebody that you loved or that you could have been better. And then number two, you want to find an excuse almost in your head as to why. And then what we do is we invalidate and we dismiss that person's experience. And sometimes we don't always agree with how they're perceiving the experience because that could be wrong too. I can tell you that there are perceptions that my son has had for me as a parent or that I had it for my mother. And that was the 10-year-old's lens of that scenario. And so the 10-year-old was passing judgment and creating an idea of what that was. And I've been holding my mom hostage for 30 years over it, as an example. And realizing that I can understand sometimes when a person says, no, you got that wrong. You're not right in your assessment here. But sometimes we have to give space to allow a person to feel emotionally safe to share and at least let them get that off their chest. And then later, at a different time, say, I heard everything. I'm sorry that I hurt you. And when you're ready, may I share what my experience with that was and why I did the things I did as a non-excuse, though.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Because those things are great to know, right? Like being able to hold space for somebody, being able to not, like you said, as a parent, not defending yourself. So people are hearing this, right?
Yeah.
How can we get people to learn those skills, though?
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? Because it's unless you are intentional, like, I want to mend this with my son. So you go see a therapist, you go see, but the people who aren't willing to do those things, how do we get them to understand?
You can't.
I need to work on this. I need to work on my conversation skills.
This is where you'll drive yourself crazy. A person who's not willing to won't.
No, what if they're willing but don't know how?
If they're willing, then they can be coached and taught. And what I mean by that is a lot of times for anyone who's listening and they're like, I want to be that person. The easiest answer, step one, is just listen. Listen and repeat. So when someone comes at you and you feel like they're coming at you because you did this and this and that, and sometimes they're way off, okay? Not everything that someone comes at you with is accurate, but that for whatever reason their distortion is there or their way they're seeing it, that's their experience. And if you love them enough, you say, okay, I'm going to listen. I'm just going to repeat. And it's like, you did this and this and that. Okay, what I heard you say was that I did this, and that. Did I get that right? How did that make you feel? What made me feel like da-da-da-da-da-da-da? So what I heard you say was, it made you feel this way, this way, this way. Did I get that correct? Because the first thing we have to make sure is that when someone's coming at us, that we're actually hearing what they're saying. Because I can't tell you how many times in my personal life, when I've coached people, where I'm saying something to them and then they go on the defense because I've triggered them. And now they're saying stuff that I said that I didn't say. I'm like, well, I actually didn't say that. But when I try to say to them, I didn't say that. You're putting words in my mouth. I didn't say that. They get even more heated and more defensive. So when I take a pause and I say to them, what I heard you say was, did I get that right? I need to get clarification of what they're hearing. Because like I said, a lot of times when you're heated, you distort. Your brain will distort.
Now your emotions take over.
Yeah.
There's a great book for anybody listening that wants to get better.
You better create an affiliate link with Amazon so you get paid for these books you're recommending.
Crucial Conversations. Man.
Is it by Crucial Conflict?
Oh, there's Crucial Conversations.
I'm so dating myself.
There's Crucial Accountability. There's like 3 or 5 different ones. And man, that shit was a game changer for communication about how to make it safe, tools to bring the person down. And it's fucking good.
Yeah. But to your point, circling back real quick, the willingness. There is so much resource at our fingertips. At
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT, I mean, for real, like podcasts, whatever. If you look at your life and you say, this is not where I want to be, these are not really how I want these relationships to be going, but I'm going to start with me. Because we're so obsessed that we want the other person to kind of conform and change and this and that, and it's just not going to happen. It isn't. But what is very fascinating is that when you take ownership of your life and you decide that I want to do the things that are going to radically change me and how I see people and how I treat them and how I'm choosing to listen to them, you'll start to see people shift in your life just because you're shifting. And if you have that willingness, Robert Greene, the guy that wrote 48 Laws of Power, one of my favorite things he said is the closest thing you ever get to self-mastery is self-awareness.
Woo.
And when you get to a point in your life where you recognize that where I'm at and the problems I'm having, whether it's your father, whether it's me or whomever, is because there's certain choices I'm making and accountability I'm not taking responsibility for. And now I want to take charge and ownership of my life, which means I'm going to have to start being accountable. And I don't know what to do. I don't have the skills, but I know that that's what I want. The moment you know that you want that, you'll find it. You'll find it through conversations. You'll hear things differently when people are talking to you. You'll go to advice to instead of the wrong people, the right people. Instead of going to those friends who will tell you what you want to hear and coddle you, you'll go to the ones that make you feel uncomfortable when they tell you the truth.
People don't want that.
I know you don't either. You're so stubborn.
What? Shit, I wish. I wish I had more people who call me out.
I call you out all the time, suck, and then you like, I ain't talking to her no more.
Here we go. Gaslighting. We're in a world of people who love comfort. They want everything to feel good.
Yeah, I know.
From their shoes to everything. Because I see all the time people got their damn hokas on with all that damn cushion. That's a random tangent.
You're so funny.
Bro, because they don't want to feel, they want comfort. We're not built like that.
It's the reason why most relationships don't work out.
Because of hokas?
Yes.
Are you serious?
No. Mofo.
Oh. I'm like, damn, there's some research
because accountability, because they want to be comfortable.
Yeah.
Right? People are just naturally, we're just innately self-serving.
I think people are just being raised very soft.
Everybody's like that. You're not an exception to the rule.
I'm not, but I think there's just some are more soft than others.
Okay, but that's a whole different conversation.
No, it's the same one. Oh, real quick, before we still have some time, but
okay.
What were your thoughts on the part of the conversation when I brought up the Bible and the religious piece?
What specifically?
When I asked them, I said, how are you calling yourself a pastor and preaching this word and you yourself aren't having a relationship with your son?
Yeah.
And then his rebuttal was, this was funny. I wish I thought about it sooner, but his rebuttal was, there's a story of Abraham where God sent his son away. Right? And like I said, I don't know the word like that. I know a couple verses, whatever. But to me, which is interesting, when he said that, after I thought about it, I'm like, you hear what you just said? God sent his son away. You didn't send me nowhere. You were just gone. I get it if you told me, hey, D, I need you to go with your mom. It's going to be better for you. I can't take care of you. That would make sense with that example.
Yeah.
God sent his son away. I don't know if it's true or not. I don't know. You have to look the story up. Anybody, I don't know. But he didn't do that. So it was just crazy. He came back with a rebuttal as opposed to, I guess, hearing me.
Yeah, because, yes, it makes sense. And that's because.
Oh, one more thing.
Yeah.
And for the example of you not being your son's life, like I said earlier, it's not like he tried and I said no, which I get because I don't want pastors out there who don't have the best relationship with the kids.
Stop worrying about what everybody else. Right now, you got to stop doing that.
Why don't you be respectful to people?
No, but you can't when you're getting your healing, okay? You will, no matter what you do, okay, let me be biblical.
Preach.
Jesus Christ was, if you are a Christian, Jesus Christ is the Messiah. He is the Savior. He is the Son of God. So he was on earth as a perfect human being and he was crucified, okay? He was crucified. So what makes you think that you sharing your truth and your experience about your life, you're going to be able to not offend anyone? You got to let that go. You are here on a public platform, and there will be people who will judge you for what you said and calling your dad out and this and this and that, and there are people who will praise you, right? I mean, you look at the P. Diddy crap with Cassie. We're not going to get into it, but I'm just saying there are some people who are looking at her like she's the bad person, and some people looking like him. It doesn't matter.
Who's the bad person?
My point is...
I'm just kidding. Don't answer that.
Yeah, because we'll go down rabbit hole with that. My point is, my dear, say what you need to say for your healing. Your heart is your heart. That is where man is measured. And you may say things from your heart, but if the intention of your heart is good, you're going to hurt somebody's feelings. Some things that you say isn't because you said it. It's because there's a part of them that is unhealed. When you get on a platform like this, you become a mirror to other people's reflections. And not everybody likes what they see. So you have to let that go, or you won't ever speak your truth entirely. So if you want to ask the question about what I thought about your dad and the whole Bible thing or whatever, get off the whole Bible thing. You're too hung up on that.
Well, that was the part of the segment.
I know, but I feel like you have such conviction about that because your dad used that as a scapegoat, according to you.
I'm curious of other people's overview or thought of it. That's all.
Other people's overview or your own.
I feel like I already told you my overview. I just said it.
Who cares about other people then?
You're on here for this. You watched it. You're critiquing and asking these questions. Well, I noticed that here at minute 23 that you said now you don't want to answer shit.
No, I want to answer, but I want to answer it for you.
Oh, okay.
I want to be here for you. I'm holding space with you. I came on this because I felt like when I watched it, there were some things about you that I saw that was beautiful, that was allowing yourself to be vulnerable. I also saw how you pulled back and you stuffed. And you and your dad are similar in that way. You're very similar in that regard. And so if you want to know him, you got to do a better job of knowing yourself, because even the way you guys laughed and some of your mannerisms, it's still your DNA.
That's what was crazy. One of my clients sent a message and she was like, the mannerism, even me, it was crazy to see and be in front of. So I'm like, you ain't been in my life 20 years, but still I could see bits of me in him. I'm like, what the fuck?
And the biggest one is how you guys have perfected suppressing emotion. So this is where you're looking for answers for a man who suppresses just as well as you do. And so you may not be able to get it from him, but what you experience when you're with him, what he's not doing for you, that's a moment for you to be inward and saying, well, how often do I show up that way? This is something I learned from him. And so it doesn't matter if God is his scapegoat in your eye or his miracle in his. That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter, because you're not going to change God being his savior or Christ being his savior, no different than he's going to change your perception on God being his scapegoat. So that's a moot point. He can go chase Adam's story and then part the seas and all of that stuff.
Step out into the ocean like Peter.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Or step out of the boat.
Once you take your hands off Christ, you sink.
I know a couple stories. I'm well versed.
I have a feeling that God gonna get you.
I'm well versed in a lot of things in this world. As I told you, I'm a genius. And people, I used to try away from it, but then I started realizing certain things.
A genius who's a genie in a bottle.
It's like, bro, how my mind comes up with stuff sometimes, I'm like, that's that trauma. That's that trauma and life experience. Life experience.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'll just put here by somebody. Maybe God gave me
I say God did. You know, I love God. You know, I love my Jesus.
Intellect to put these things together, because I'd be like, whoa. And some people are shocked sometimes when I know so much. How do you know that? I'm like, bro, you just got to be aware of everything around life. Some people aren't aware.
Okay, but you also can you just do me a favor and eat a little bit of humble pie?
No.
Because you won't learn.
I've been eating humble pie my whole life. Let me shine, Lorraine. You just said you gave me a space. Now you're taking it back.
Okay, there you go. That's right.
Stand on business. Stay consistent.
Come on, give it up. Give it up.
Damn.
No, because the only reason why I say that, and obviously I know you're a genius and everything like that. You say it every time I'm on the show. You always mention you're a genius. So I'm like, is he convincing me or is he convincing himself at this point? Because I've heard this time and time again. And a real genius don't need to have to flex.
You're right.
Just saying. But I'm not saying you're not. Obviously, you're very smart and you are witty and all that good stuff, whatever. But there's one thing to be really, really smart, and there's another thing to be very wise.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the wisdom comes from experience. And where wisdom showed up for you a couple of weeks ago when you talked to your dad was to hold that space with him and to allow him to share how he felt he could or how he knows how to. I don't know how his communication skills or how much depth he has to him, how much he was taught. He's allowed to have that kind of depth. And like he blocks his emotions like you do, it was easy to just say fluff. Because if he told his truth, really, truly, would he have broken down? And y'all don't know each other like that.
Do you think he even knows?
I think so.
That he even knows his truth enough?
I think he does, but I think knowing your truth and resurrecting it are two different things. And I think that when you're really healing, it is painful. Painful. It's one thing we don't talk about. You see these people on platforms and stuff, and they're healed and they've got these powerful messages. But there is a very dark side to healing. And it is, you got to unearth and you've got to really deal with stuff. And some people will look at you and say, it is not worth that healing. I am good right where I'm at right now. Let me just move forward with my life. But to bring up all that stuff that's going to make my son who I abandoned feel better is not worth that pain.
Another thing,
as an example.
Another thing I didn't talk about was there is like resentment I feel towards my sister that I have. So we share him. She's how old am I? 34. I think she's 5-6 years younger than me.
Okay.
And at one point, kids, we were around each other, this and that. And then
she resents you or him or both?
Her.
You resent your sister?
Sometimes.
Okay.
I think it's the right word to use.
Okay.
But because she has a somewhat relationship with him, like they talk, they hang out, this and that. She wants to have a relationship with me. We kind of do. It could be better on my end. But sometimes I'd be thinking, like, what the fuck? Like, you over here with this, like, you over here with him, he even in my life, like, how? And I've been working on getting past that and understand it doesn't have to even be, like, correlated together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of
like,
course.
I can have a genuine relationship with her as a sister, build that. Her relationship with him has nothing to do with me.
And that's a pattern of yours, too.
Really?
Yeah. That I've noticed with you, if I can say candidly, that is a very unhealthy pattern that you carry in every part of your life, actually. It's like when you have some kind of something with somebody and you expect everyone to form an alliance around you around it. And you do get very sensitive if they still honor whatever relationship they have with a person that you don't have that relationship with. So I definitely highly, highly recommend. And if that's the root of that, then you need to definitely figure that out, because it is definitely a detriment to you. It is not serving your life whatsoever. Because just like you and I and every human being is uniquely made, there will never be a duplication. I don't care if you can clone people or whatever. Our life's experiences are so unique to us, such as our thumbprint, that it'll never be duplicated. That also equates to every reaction and relationship we have, everybody. So your relationship with your father has to do with the time and place you were born, the fact that you're male, the dynamic between mom and dad and son and dad. There's so many different combinations that make that piece of the puzzle what it is. And that's going to be a very different relationship and a different dynamic than what your sister might have with him. Her life experiences might teach her something different because women need their fathers differently. And so her wanting that piece of that puzzle from her dad has nothing to do with how she wants a relationship with her brother, because she can't love her brother like her father and vice versa. And so you have to let her hold space for her abundance. And her abundance is her space to be able to love. And every person in her life will be a unique version of love for her because they are unique relationships.
It's crazy how easier it is to preach or coach. I don't use the word preach, but coach people in certain things, and you can't even take care of yourself. Because I know for me, I always tell people, like, I've had bad experiences with certain jobs I've worked in, gyms and stuff. And when somebody asks me about it, like, how's so-and-so? And I'm like, my relationship wasn't the best, but you can go and make your own with them without me saying bad things about that person.
Well, because you're permitting it. It's different.
What I'm saying is, it's almost similar to me.
If you give permission, it's control. So when you say, no, go ahead and be with that person, even though I have indifferences, you've given the blessing. That's different than when you feel, and I wrote this word down because this is what came to me. When the biggest issue, the thread here that might be the big thorn in your side with your relationship with your father was you were not a priority, okay? That is something you said earlier. When your sister chooses, in your mind, him over you and your relationship, you are no longer a priority. So whenever that trigger happens for you and you don't feel like you're being prioritized, then it becomes a route back to your father. And so that's what that is. Yeah, I can permit you to go talk to my enemy.
They ain't always enemies,
but I feel like a priority
but
because
make it clear.
You let me be the one to decide
she
that.
didn't like. I'll make it clear. She didn't choose him over me. Like, she still wants a relationship with me.
But you're like,
it's me.
But it's a priority thing
Kinda.
Because why would you talk to that dude when he did this to me?
Yeah.
She should choose you, make you the priority.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. It's always both sides. I'm always struggling and fighting both sides of things. So I'm like, bro, why you be with bad people? But then I guess bad people is depending on our perception of them. Because there's some people out there who
it's experiential.
people out there in the world who think Ted Bundy was the greatest human ever, probably.
It's experiential. Every bad person has something good in them too. Not every bad person does bad to every single person in their lives. That's just not true. As evil as people can be, and there are some very evil people in this world, they're not evil to everybody. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so when we assume that, you know, it's like, again, and going back to just being inward and saying, what holds space for my life that's important for me? And how do I respect that for myself, but also respect the choices that other people making, even if I don't like them? And that's something I struggle with, particularly when I see people making mistakes in their lives, or they're doing things that are detrimental, or holding space in relationships with people that are not good for them. And then I get judgmental, and I want to have an opinion about that, you know? But again, a lot of times when I'm doing that, it's just me deflecting. Am I protecting them, or am I projecting onto them? Because usually when the judgment comes in, there's a part of us that does that, and we're not being honest about that, you know?
Well, Lorraine, I appreciate you taking time, coming on, analyzing, getting a recap of the episode.
Yeah.
That was great. You know, great insights. I hope people who listen to that and listen to this, and they get their own healing going. And you have any lasting words for the audience?
I just want to say to anybody out there that is going through this, have had a parent in their life that they was absent, and you don't have the opportunity to ever physically talk to them, find a way, find somebody to be able to allow yourself to grieve that relationship. Because it's a relationship you're going to have to grieve, you know? Even if they're still alive, even if they decide they want to come back into your life, whoever they needed to be for you when you were a child, you have to grieve that. I don't know if that made sense, but
We'll make it make sense for those who resonate.
because that's what you need. You need things to make sense.
Some people will agree. Some people will bash you. What the hell is she
okay.
talking about? Oh my God, she's the Messiah. People are going to say different things.
No, I am not the Messiah. That's
So anyways,
blasphemy.
Here we go. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please check out the episode with my father from 2 weeks ago if you have not yet. I'll tag Lorraine's Instagram on this description of this podcast. She has a great podcast herself and is an amazing human being.
Thank you.
I'm going to leave you with the word.
The word?
A word.
Oh.
Gotta let it come to me naturally.
Try John 3:16.
Stone Cold Steve Austin. Yeah, no word.
For God so loved the
We're not
earth
doing
that he
that.
gave
Come
his
on,
only
dude.
begotten son,
Now you're gonna have the
that
atheist come after
whosoever
me.
believe in him shall have everlasting life.
All right, here's the word. You don't need permission to be great. You just gotta make a decision, become more aware, more accountable, and keep your promises to yourself. Stop fucking around. You know what you're capable of. So get to it. 2 words. Keep growing.